Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Joined now by our great friend Lars Larson. Lars, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. How did the weekend treat you?
Not bad, not bad. My parents are in town from east of the Great River, so they love the West, and they love the culture here in Idaho. So that was about it, really.
Well, they should move out to where you are. They could be closer to you, and they could be in a better part of the country.
Indeed, Lars. And your weekend, how was it?
Fantastic. It got rather hot down here. I know that Boise is used to temps like this, but we were either right at or just below 100 degrees, and so it got a little toasty.
Indeed. Speaking of toasty, what do you make of the president's world tour so far?
Well, I think he's doing very, very well. He walks away from NATO, with NATO being in better shape simply by the force of Trump's personality. I mean, he'd made demands that the NATO countries step up, and they began to increase their funding. Remember, when we talk about their funding, we're talking about money they spend on their own defensive posture. These aren't dues to an organization. They're, because that's not the way it works. The way it works is that each country is supposed to spend a certain amount of money on its own defense. And understand that if the individual NATO countries fund their own defense well, then you'll have less need or less cause or fewer occasions where there's cause to call on the other NATO countries for support. There's a thing called Article 5 in the NATO agreement that says that an attack on one is an attack on all. Well, if each country funds its own defense well, you won't have to call on the other countries. Now, it's only happened once in the aftermath of the 9/11 terrorist attacks on America. NATO said, we will join in with you because an attack on your country is an attack on all of us. But the idea that the United States should spend almost 4% of GDP on defense, and we've asked the NATO countries to spend 2%, and most of them spend far less than that. Some of them spend 1%. So we've sized the kind of defense we expect from them to the size of their income or their gross domestic product. So it's not unfair. We understand that countries like Luxembourg, which, believe it or not, is a member of NATO, is not going to spend much money. They spend, I think, $300 million. I don't think $300 million would buy a single one of the United States' latest jet fighters. I think they're about $350 each. So it's we're not asking much of them, and they haven't been delivering much. And now, because of Donald Trump, they are. Now the president has been meeting with Vladimir Putin, and we were kind of expecting a few minutes ago for the president to come out and make some remarks along with Vladimir Putin. Apparently, the meeting went long, and so we're still waiting. But I think the president is knocking it out of the park. And, of course, the press is bending over backwards to try to find things wrong with this. The latest gaffe over the weekend was that when he arrived in Finland for the meeting with Putin, that the president made remarks that he was very pleased to see the president of Finland at the NATO meeting. And reporters immediately jumped on this and said, Finland's never been a member of NATO, which is correct. But what they missed was the president of Finland attended the NATO meeting. So when the president said it was nice to see you at the meeting, he was talking about the fact that he'd met with the president of Finland at the meeting, which the president seemed to be aware of, but the press wasn't aware of it. So they were looking for an opportunity to ridicule this president as he's traveling outside of American soil, which I think is particularly un-American. I'm not saying that the press is supposed to be a rah-rah team for the president. On the other hand, to deliberately undercut the leader of your country while you're working as an American journalist and look for opportunities to try to say he doesn't know what he's talking about, I think is, especially when the press corps in this case was wrong and the president was right, is particularly egregious.
Lars Larson joining us, our great friend. Of course, you can catch him weekdays 6 to 9 here at KIDO Talk Radio. Of course, you can catch him anytime at larslarson.com. So, Lars, what do you make, and you talk about this all the time, talk journalism. And talk radio is very different from what we see on network TV, but how I usually spend my weekend is I watch all the Sunday shows.
Yep.
And
good idea, by the way.
Thank you, sir. What's the deal with, whether it's Chuck Todd or others, they seem to want to lecture the president, or these guests want to lecture the president on how to behave. Is that really the point, or should they be provoking discussion from both sides?
Well, I think they should provoke discussion from both sides. But, Kevin, you and I both know, because you watch the Sunday shows, I watch the Sunday shows, that the press seems to take it as its mission to do something that was actually kind of forecast during the presidential campaign, in which reporters of the New York Times said our usual job is to be objective, but there are times where the country is under such a great threat. They view Donald Trump not as the choice of American voters, which is what he is, but as a threat to the existence of the country, that they think that at that point you can break the rules. And I think they kind of imagine themselves, for example, if you were a reporter in Nazi Germany in the lead up to World War II, that you might have said, well, part of my job is to warn the German people about this guy Hitler and what a threat he poses to the country. They view this president, and they make the comparison all the time between this president and his supporters like you and like me as being a Hitler-like figure. And what's funny about it, and it really is laughable, is that the previous president was, in fact, a guy who operated unconstitutionally, and I can give you specific examples of that, operated by simply making law with the stroke of his pen, which the Constitution does not allow. This president has operated within the system, even at times where he wanted to get something done, where he couldn't persuade the Congress, and at that point the president said, okay, let's move on to the next item, because this president understands that he operates under a set of constraints. We view the president as very, very powerful. He is in some ways, and in some ways, the founders of this country designed a very weak chief executive. They didn't give him much power at all. He can't spend a dime without the Congress saying so. We apparently have learned that 600 federal judges around America, any one of them can say, the president just did this and I'm shutting it down. And they have done that. And they've done it and they've been wrong. But being proved wrong usually takes a many years long trip through the court system. So we have a very weak chief executive by Constitution, but the president is working within that to get things done, and he is getting things done, which is particularly impressive. I wasn't that impressed when I almost said Vladimir Putin, when Barack Obama would sign an executive order. I would say, hold on, he's supposed to get this by legislation. But Barack Obama, for all the things people said about him being well-spoken and persuasive and all that, he couldn't persuade the Congress to do much of anything. He got Obamacare through, and that was about it. And now most of that, thankfully, is gone. So what do you say about a guy who's president for 8 years and can't accomplish much of anything because he doesn't understand how the job works? You as a president, if you want to get a law changed, you have to go to the Congress and persuade them. You have to go to the American public and say, look, we need this changed. Call your representatives. Barack Obama was either incapable of doing it or he was too lazy to do the hard work of persuading the people's representatives that we need change. Now the president is doing things like going to NATO, and which a lot of other presidents have done and said, you need to pay more money. And he's getting that done. Those countries have actually said, okay, fine, we'll pay more. I mean, some of them are now saying it may take them years to be able to get up to the proper level of funding, but no other president's had the guts to do that. And he had the guts to take some of the more ridiculous moves that Obama did, like the Paris Climate Accord and this terrible deal with Iran, and simply say, we're not taking part in this. We're out of this. And he had every right to do so, because again, if Barack Obama had crafted the Iran deal so that it could be approved as treaties are required to be approved by the U.S. Senate, there's not much of anything that Donald Trump could have done to reverse it. But because Obama chose to say, I'm going to have a treaty, but I'm going to have the kind of treaty that is a personal deal between him and the mad mullahs of Tehran, and I'm not going to have it ratified by the Senate, it became disposable. It was simply a deal that the minute Obama left office, the deal was gone. Could be gone.
Our great friend Lars Larson joining us. Lars, before we get to Peter Strzok and last week's testimony, I don't think we've ever seen or heard anything like this. What, again, as someone who does a regional show, is beloved in the Northwest, a national show, you're all over the country. Heck, you go all over the world bringing the message to the folks. What impact did Obama have on us for 8 years? And are we ever going to get away from that culturally? We're a lot different culturally than we were pre-Obama.
I'll tell you the one thing he did do, while he was incapable of getting treaties passed, he was largely incapable of getting legislation passed, and most of what he has done has now been erased. In fact, the rumor is that he was in Boise recently and stopped by the Subaru dealership to see if he could buy a Legacy. Apparently, he was thinking of a different kind of Legacy.
Right.
But you know, when you think about what did this guy leave us with, most of what he did in government is not there. But socially, what he managed to do through 8 years of race baiting was he changed the culture of this country, which I think we can change back. But he caused more antipathy between black and brown people and the majority population than I think we've seen since the 1950s. And he did it deliberately. You could see it. He'd never missed an opportunity to remind you, and there are ways of reminding people things, Kevin. You and I both do this personally, where we remind someone of something without actually saying it out loud or without saying those words out loud. And Obama would remind you all the time that he was the historic first black president of the United States. And he would make comments about the stupid cop who came up on the porch. I'm quoting Obama. I don't think the cops were stupid. On the porch of his friend, that if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. You know, these were the race baiting that he did. And he managed to create some real problems. The second thing he did was he undercut one of the most important functions of government in the United States. I've said for a long time that if the federal government did national security well and didn't do much of anything else, I'd be a happy American. You know, there are thousands of government programs at the federal level. I don't need most of them. I don't want most of them. Most Americans don't want most of them. What we want is national security. At the local level, if the City Council of Boise delivers public safety well and did a lousy job on parks and did a lousy job on streets and did a lousy job on everything else, if they did public safety exceedingly well, and I don't know their record, well, I assume they probably do a great job of public safety. You know, I'm stuck here in Portland with a mayor who's literally ordered the police to stay hands off from certain lawbreakers who are opposing the ICE policies of the federal government. You literally have a mayor saying, let them commit crimes if they oppose a program I don't like. So the president, Obama, created a real distrust of the police. He enhanced the distrust that already existed in the communities of color in this country, and that created a big problem and it will likely have decades-long meaning, and here's what I mean by that. It is now very hard for the police departments of America to attract really highly qualified young men and women. They look at the attitude, the public attitude of, I think, a minority number of Americans, this anti-cop, anti-blue attitude, and they say, I'm not going to go to work doing that. Well, think about the effects that has. If the Boise PD or the Seattle PD, which is now having police leave its ranks because they're tired of being treated this way by the public, and they're tired of politicians who won't back them up and provide them, with the support they need to do a very difficult job. Well, if you're not recruiting 21 and 22-year-old men and women to work in your local police department because they say, I'd rather do anything else rather than be a cop, that is going to have an effect. Let's say, for example, the 22-year-old man or woman who doesn't go to work as a cop in Seattle or Portland or some other more politically correct communities, that has an effect on that department for the next several decades because they'll still hire police officers, but they'll have to take, second choice because the really, truly talented people have said, I don't want that job because of the fact that the politicians, and in the case of Obama, the number one politician, have caused the public to think of that work. So I'm not going in there. That has an effect for decades on a society because that means those people go off to some other profession and we get people who are not as good. I mean, they still may be decent cops, but they will not be the best, possible candidates because we've scared those people away. We've said that police, and this could be changed. And I know that our current president does everything he can to support the police. And he reminds Americans of how important it is that we support what they do. It's a tough job. I mean, in Seattle over the weekend, there was a man who was shot by the police. The man was pulling a gun. He had a gun in his waistband. Nobody disputes that. Yet the community has giant protests against the police shooting a guy who was pulling a gun out of his waistband. As far as I'm concerned, Kevin, if you're facing the police and you decide to reach for a gun, the police should assume that you're putting that gun in your hand to either hurt other people or to hurt the cops that person is confronting. You have a choice as a citizen. If you get stopped by a cop, you can be belligerent, you can be physically combative if you want to, but as far as I'm concerned, if you present a threat, the police need to neutralize that threat. And if that's the end of your life, then that is your choice. And when politicians will not support our cops, it has an effect on the rest of us, Kevin. Even if you and I haven't called the police, it's got to be a couple of decades since the last time I called the police for help. But I know that any day I can pick up the phone, dial 911, and say, I've got a problem. I need an officer. And if it's enough of an emergency, they'll be there in 4 minutes or less. That's a reassuring feeling. What happens when you have people who are less aggressive and they say, oh, I'm going to give this guy who's holding a gun or a knife the benefit of the doubt and pause? Well, sometimes it'll still work out well. And sometimes you'll end up with more dead civilians and more dead police officers. And is that the result we want? We now have a president who pushes back against this anti-cop message. But 8 years of Barack Obama and the Ferguson effect and everything else have done a large amount of damage.
Lars, we're going to have to leave it at that. I promise next week we'll talk about Peter Strzok. That'll have to wait.
There's so much we could spend a whole hour talking about that guy. And how soon can we get rid of Mueller, Strzok, Page, all the rest of these bozos who've been wrecking a great federal agency?
Lars Larson tonight at 6, anytime online, LarsLarson.com, of course, on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care.
All right, our great friend Lars Larson. I bet you thought I was going to take a break, but we're going to fit you in because you've waited so long, and we always love our friend Cindy at KIDO Talk Radio.
Oh, Kevin, that would have been perfectly okay if you did take a break. I just wanted to say that I don't know why you would even think that it is nothing more with this cowboy deal. It's a progressive left agenda. At the end of Ghostbusters, they would like everybody to be an android and it. So no matter how you think of what a cowboy is like you. A cowboy had guts, perseverance, tenacity. They were kind of a loner and to be able to go do what they had to do. So there's nothing, that said, it doesn't surprise me at all. It's just another agenda to undermine this nation as much as Barack Hussein. And I mean, you know what? He wasn't black. He was a mulatto. I'm tired of this because he had a white mother. What happened to mothers? What happened to his mother anyway? So that being said, Kevin, I just wanted to say, what's the other thing you equate with a cowboy? And to me, it's a gun. And I was over at independent shooting and, I have to think, isn't it a great thing? They just want you to be pushed into this mold. You know what they have over there? They have a youth firearms education class. I was thinking, how great.
They
Did
do.
You know that?
And, yes, I do. In fact, we'll be there on Friday. Maybe you can swing by.
Well, of course I was going to swing by, but I had a great
yeah.
time over there for an hour anyway. But, we just need more people to push back at what they're trying to make you fearful and to totally take this nation down from within.
Cindy, well said. Thank you.
Everybody watch oh my God, the American stand-up. I saw it Saturday night.
Oh,
Those
change
are my
your life,
kind of
doesn't
men.
it? Yeah, change your life, doesn't it?
Bye-bye, forever. I cried myself all the way to sleep. Anyway, we're for you, Mr. Bundy, and we want the rights back to the states to manage the lands and to manage the water.
I'm saying stuff to you, Cindy, and you just keep going.
Yeah, I know, Kevin. I know. That's
part of your charm. I get it.
Okay. Well, Kevin, you have a great day now.
Cindy, stay locked and loaded.
Yes, Kevin, I am. I'll be at the council meeting tonight. That ought to be interesting in itself.
Well, we'll
Bye-bye,
wait for your
Kevin.
report. Bye-bye. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Jump the gun on that one. Must be Monday. Live to Helsinki, Finland. That's right. Live to Helsinki, Finland. Simon Owen joining us from Fox News Radio, only on KIDO Talk Radio. Simon, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
Of course, I think it's evening there or something like that. The president, both presidents meeting, Putin and Trump. What's it like there on the scene?
Well, there's a bit of a bustle going on in the background here because we are waiting to watch in on some kind of press briefing to be given by Presidents Trump and Putin. We think they are coming to the end of this get-together. They met one-on-one, first of all, and that meeting lasted more than 2 hours, which is a good half hour longer than the White House had scheduled. Just President Trump and President Putin and 2 translators. That's it. So we'll never know really for sure what was discussed. There were no note takers in there. We'll never know really what they got through in those conversations. But the president said as he came out of that meeting and moved into the second part of the day, which is a working lunch with advisors on hand as well, the president simply said it was a very good start for everybody. And that's all we know.
It's amazing, though. Is it unusual that you just have 2 leaders and 2 translators and that's it?
Well, it's what President Trump did with Kim Jong-un of North Korea a few weeks ago, and that was, I think, if there's, the president has said that European allies have thanked him for holding this meeting, and I think it's a good thing that he's talking. If those European allies have any anxiousness, it would have been about that first meeting one-on-one, because there is this disconnect frequently between what the president says and what his administration say. And I think when you've got Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, and John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, sat alongside him, it's going to be, those 2 are likely to be pressing the Russians about, for instance, election meddling and that sort of thing. When it's President Trump, you never really know, because even this morning on Twitter, when he was here in Helsinki this morning, he was writing on Twitter that years of U.S. stupidity are to blame for the current state of relations with Russia being so rocky as they are. And I think his advisors would say that it's more to do with Russia. Excuse me a minute, there's an announcement there. It sounds like this press conference is going to start quite soon. And they would say that it was to do with Russia annexing part of Ukraine or meddling in foreign elections rather than U.S. stupidity being to blame. So you never quite know what the president's going to say when it's just one-on-one. But hopefully, imminently, when we hear from these 2 leaders, we'll get an idea.
Simon, we always appreciate it. I know you're very busy. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Kevin.
Our great friend Simon Owen, wow, live in Helsinki. Again, that's why we love being a part of Fox News, the only radio station in the Treasure Valley that will take you to the places that matter. Right before this announcement's going to start, we go to the publisher of the Gem State Patriot, Tea Party Bob, who, I don't know, what type of thing do you have there that it seems like I'm hearing myself? Or you have us on speaker? Do you have us? Are you simulcasting somewhere? What's going on here?
Well, actually, I'm listening into the Helsinki meeting,
I see. Have you been consulted on that?
They don't consult me on anything anymore. I just barge in.
That's hard to believe.
You really need to curtail the airtime for Liberal Steve. He just gets too much of it, and he's definitely polluting the airwaves.
Wow.
I want to talk a little bit of... Go ahead.
No, I was going to say Liberal Steve called earlier today, and he was defending Peter Strzok, but that seems like a lifetime ago.
I know. He should be struck by lightning or something to straighten his butt out. Anyway, I'm not quite sure why everyone is surprised at the testimony of Strzok. This is what you can expect from 8 years of liberal hiring and appointments by the Obama administration. We have a deep state so embedded in a bureaucratic system that it's going to take decades to find them and get them out. You only have to look at the DOJ and the way they obstructed the congressional committees in obtaining the necessary documents to do the proper investigation. This is the reason the Republicans need to win these elections, and they need to win seats in the House and the Senate if they're going to fight these blood-sucking libtards that have basically taken over our government. If silent majority thinks that we took care of the problem by electing Trump as president, they're sadly mistaken. The root of the problem started in our higher education institutions, where the left has just about completely taken over and have been in the process of trying to change America and our values for the past 4 decades. We are at a point of departure from our values when you see a small group of liberals that can argue that the moniker cowboy is a racist term and they should change it at the University of Wyoming. What people have to understand is that this problem is a liberal culture originated in our hometowns, in our local schools, where the parents have left the education of their children to liberal teachers and administrators who educate our kids. They stopped taking a serious interest in the curriculum that was being taught and stopped having input into how the school system was being run, so that now we have liberal daycare centers in just about all of our public schools. If you want to if you want to get to the root of the problem, we need to start looking in our own backyards, because we're the cause of the problem by not taking an active interest in who is running our schools and our state education department. So if anyone thinks by electing Trump that we're going to solve all of our problems, they had better think again and start getting involved in the education of their children and making sure that they go to the polls in the future elections. You know, Kevin, if no one is watching the chicken coop, the foxes are going to have their way with the chickens. Simple as that.
Tea Party Bob, thank you, sir.
Sir. Have a great day.
All right, our great friend, the publisher of the Gem State Patriot, gemstatepatriot.com. Phone number's here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. If you miss any hour of the program, you can always go to KIDOtalkradio.com and check out the 6 o'clock hour, which was very feisty. We were talking about Peter Strzok's testimony, and it's marvelous. It hasn't gone bad. In fact, you got to give it to Congress for standing up to Peter Strzok and saying what you said, what you've done is not appropriate. If you missed it, here's a little sample.
How many times did you look so innocent into your wife's eye and lie to her about Lisa?
Mr. Chairman, this is outrageous.
Credibility of a witness
Shame
is
on
always
you,
an
Mr.
issue.
Mr. Chairman, please.
Have you Mr. Chairman, this is intolerable harassment of the witness.
What's wrong with that? You need your medication.
The gentleman controls the time.
I ask that the witness be permitted to respond.
He will be permitted. He will be permitted
Did
to
you
respond.
ever
The
talk
gentleman
to
controls
Hillary
the time.
Clinton?
You were both rooting for Hillary Clinton to win, and you both detested Donald Trump. Did you not?
I think that's fair to say.
You're here, and you're not taking the fifth.
That's correct.
Did you consider taking the fifth?
No.
Why not?
I've done nothing wrong. Let me rephrase that. I am sorry. I am sorry for...
Smug, smirking, arrogant, condescending. Peter Smirk.
For these texts and the way they've been used, for the harm and hurt they've caused my family, for the perception of people in the public, and I am sorry and deeply regretful for that.
Your reaction, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Why does this man still have a job with the FBI? Terry from State College, Pennsylvania. Good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning, Kevin. Kevin, he's going to be protected by the deep state, Democrats, whatever we want to call it.
Well, one guy wanted to give him a Purple Heart.
Think about this. What kind of insanity brings about those kind of thoughts? Kevin, I think we've got a big surprise coming for us. I cannot say for sure, but Mr. Trump meeting with Putin, I think there's something there for America. I think there's something there for the whole world in respect to economics. If you remember, you'll know this. What picture of what past president does President Trump have hanging on his wall in the White House?
Andrew Jackson.
Exactly. How many years ago was it that Russia totally kicked out the Rothschilds, the central bankers, the feds out of their country?
The Romanovs.
We have that. Yeah, we have that common.
The Russian Revolution, where they killed the Tsar and his family.
Yeah, I think we're going to see it. We're going to see it. I think there's going to be a meeting of the minds there, and I think there's going to be, the boogeyman. The deep state has created Russia as the boogeyman. I'm not making them perfect, because by far leadership hasn't been. But somebody just asked me the other day, hey, I heard that Russia has a underground bunker that's inside of the mountain. Kevin, that bunker's so big you can fly a small airplane inside of it. They have a bunker for every Russian citizen. Do tyrants that hate their citizens do this? Build nuclear bunkers for every single citizen? I mean, that's just one reality. But I do believe that we're going to see a meeting of the minds there, and I think we're going to see some cooperation. And I think we're going to get rid of many of these tariffs and many of these penalties that we put on Russia that were, because he's a created boogeyman in many respects. And again, I'm not saying he's a good man. I'm not saying that. But there's a lot of quality about him that we never know about or ever hear about in respect to him being a nationalist.
Where were all the reporters that hate Putin, that hate Russia, when Obama was letting him take over Crimea and was threatening to cut off Europe from natural gas? Remember that? Where was Chuck Todd and all the do-gooders that worry about how the president's going to behave? Where was Andrea Mitchell?
Hey, we were going to build a pipeline right through Syria, and we were going to counter Russia that way in the gas production. Whoops, can't do that. We helped the rebels there gain ground. We definitely, without question, funded them and took munitions into them. Remember, Crimea was a whole different animal. Off the coast of Crimea, and a lot of people aren't aware that southern Crimea, off the coast is oil reserves. Under there, they say, will rival the Black Sea. So that got complicated because we don't want Russia to have it, but yet at the same time, Russia really didn't want the Crimeans to have their own massive independence from all that wealth. But yet, in southern Crimea, they're mostly of Russian descent, and they love the motherland Russia. So it gets a little more complicated than we understand here. And, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, I don't know. I think I'm just excited, though, that the President Trump and Putin are together in respect. I think economically it's going to be really good for the globe, except for those people that are tied in deeply to the deep state, whoever we want to call the deep state. And it's not going to be good for the central bankers. But I do think it's something we're going to be able later to go, yes, all right, and it's going to bring about wealth for a while for everybody. I don't know, there could be severe opposition. The deep state's not going to want that. They're going to lose their more control. So that's all I got to say today, but I think we have something to look forward to here that's going to surprise everybody.
Terry being optimistic, that's a first.
That is a first. You can put that in your books, folks. Write that in your journal.
Thank you, Terry.
Kevin, you have a good day.
You have a great day as well. Our great friend Terry from State College, Pennsylvania. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And this is just so compelling, we have to hear it again.
How many times did you look so innocent into your wife's eye and lie to her about Lisa?
Mr. Chairman, this is outrageous.
Credibility of a witness
Shame
is
on
always
you,
an
Mr.
issue.
Mr. Chairman, please.
Mr. Chairman, this is intolerable.
Agent Strzok, between July 31st, 2016 and August 6, 2016, how many witness interviews did you conduct as part of the Russia-Trump campaign alleged collusion investigation?
I don't recall, and I'd have to check the case file.
We waited all that time for that answer?
Yes, sir. I am telling you, sir, I separated out my personal belief from any
But you did not do that with regard to Attorney Page, who was also involved in these investigations.
Sir, I disagree with that. I separated out my personal beliefs from any action I took officially as an FBI agent every day. I have always told the truth.
Your reaction next, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Pro-Life joins us now. Kevin Miller in the morning, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, they committed adultery, and you'd think that they'd get fired just for that. And, it wouldn't have been too many decades ago. If you were adulterous and you're an FBI agent, you'd be gone. Maybe if you were any kind of a government agent. Now, presidents are, like Clinton, are adulterous, and there's no consequence to that at all. And it just shows how degenerate we really are. And so.
Well, you're positive this morning.
Yeah, well,
Terry just had something positive. I thought we could build on that. A lot of people criticize this program. They go, it's you and your negative Nellies. But so much for the positivity. That's out of the way.
Well, I think the meeting with Putin and the president, I think something good could come out of that. I'm optimistic about that. It's in a nice country, Finland. Finland's always been kind of a sensible place. And,
I get them confused with Sweden, personally.
Well, Finland's the only country that paid back their World War II debts of all of them, I think.
Gotta love the Finns.
Yep, they're pretty honorable people. Well, anyway, we just have to shape ourselves up rather than, look to government to do something for us, because it's never going to save anybody. Maybe Jesus can save us, but the government can't. So that's about all I've got to say. And we just have a degenerate society, and like when I went to the gay parade, there was quite a few churches that had representatives there.
At the gay parade?
Yeah. Saying, welcome to our church, we're gay, kind of like that. Now, that's really pretty terrible. And
what is that? Welcome to the church, we're gay?
No, we welcome gays in our church. And some of them probably have gay pastors, but anyway, those kind of churches aren't really Christian churches.
Wow.
And
back that one up.
Back that one up? Well, I mean, Jesus said, and abortion, killing innocent little babies.
Right, but we're talking about the gays of the church right now.
Yeah, I know. Well,
you said they weren't real churches.
No, they're not really. They're not Christ Church.
Well, you gotta back that one up for the second time.
Well, it's obvious that when you're defying natural law and God's law, which is against homosexuality, bisexuality, transgenderism, adultery, fornication, all those things, you're not following God's law. So regardless of what your doctrine is, other than that, you can't, if you're murdering babies and being sexually wild, you can't be Christ Church. It's just obvious.
I wonder how they would take that.
Well, I don't care how they take it. It's true. So they're just going to have to live with that, or else change their ideas. But you're not. See, they keep dwindling in population. All those churches that take those positions, they're not favored by anybody, except people that are real liberal. So then they don't even believe in God anymore. They just say, well, hey, the Bible's maybe a historical document, but it doesn't really show that Christ was resurrected. Well, I believe he was. He is God. They even throw that out. So, I mean, when people start twisting stuff around, they get really messed up.
Well, we'll set that out for a reaction. Thank you, Pro-Life.
All right. See you.
Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's get you to work.
7's Eric Gebert.
And Kevin Miller in the morning. Like I said, it was refreshing to hear and to see members of Congress laying the smackdown on Peter Strzok. It was even more refreshing to see Strzok not being a phony, not being politically correct, and believing that he was right and fighting back. As much as I disagree with Peter Strzok, Smirk, whatever, I have to give him props for that. We need more of that as opposed to saying one thing and doing another. If he truly believes that he did nothing wrong, with the lapse of judgment, with cheering and such, anyone who has been around law enforcement, anyone who's been around the military, we all know you keep your opinions to yourself. You keep politics out of national security. A huge lapse of judgment, personally and professionally. And as our friend Sean Hannity says, he needs to go. Hey, folks, keep it here. Glenn Beck, Dave Ramsey, Sean Hannity, Lars Larson next. Ray and I, great job as always. God bless everyone and keep the faith.